Imagine that one ordinary person develops a precise, involuntary ability. They can instantly detect when someone feels genuine romantic or sexual attraction toward another person. Not a guess, not a behavioral inference, not reading body language, but a clear internal signal that activates the moment attraction exists. The signal does not explain why the attraction exists, does not indicate intensity beyond a basic threshold, and does not grant mind-reading powers. It simply answers one binary question: is attraction present right now, yes or no? It works only within direct sensory range. If the person can perceive the individuals involved, they can detect it. It does not function through screens, written text, or recorded media. It does not predict future attraction, and it does not retroactively reveal past feelings. It is immediate, real-time, and limited. At first glance, this ability seems socially powerful, but it is constrained by a fundamental reality. Attraction is common, fluctuating, and often inconsequential. Most people experience passing attraction multiple times per day. The ability, therefore, does not reveal secret love stories so much as it exposes the low-level background radiation of human desire. In a crowded subway car, the signal would likely activate repeatedly. In an office, it would flicker constantly. The information, while accurate, would not automatically be meaningful. The first significant effect would be psychological rather than structural. The individual would quickly learn that attraction is less rare and less dramatic than cultural narratives suggest. The myth of exclusivity would erode. They would also discover that attraction frequently occurs without intent, without action, and without moral weight. This realization could either make them more tolerant or more cynical. Over time, however, the constant awareness would likely normalize the phenomenon. What feels shocking on day 1 becomes statistical noise by month 3. Socially, the ability becomes consequential only when applied strategically. In dating contexts, the person could instantly know whether interest is mutual. This eliminates ambiguity but does not eliminate compatibility. Someone may feel attraction yet still be unsuitable due to values, timing, or circumstance. The ability streamlines the early filtering process but does not solve the deeper complexities of relationships. It removes uncertainty at the surface while leaving structural compatibility untouched. In professional environments, the ability introduces subtle ethical tension. The person would become aware of attraction in hierarchies, employee to manager, student to professor, politician to aide. However, awareness does not equate to evidence. Attraction alone is not misconduct. Acting on it is. The individual would possess information that is socially sensitive but legally irrelevant unless behavior crosses defined boundaries. This creates a cognitive burden, knowing things that cannot responsibly be acted upon. Over time, word would spread. Even if the individual attempts privacy, patterns would emerge. Accurate predictions in dating scenarios, uncanny insights into romantic triangles, the consistent ability to identify mutual interest. Eventually, the explanation would surface. Once public, the ability would shift from curiosity to economic asset. Dating platforms might attempt to recruit the individual as a consultant. Matchmaking services would see measurable efficiency gains. Corporate environments might quietly seek their presence during hiring to detect inappropriate dynamics before they manifest. At this point, institutional response becomes important. Governments would likely show initial skepticism, then cautious interest. The ability does not threaten national security in a traditional sense, but it touches on privacy in an unusual way. It reveals an internal state without consent. However, because attraction is transient and not inherently criminal, regulating such an ability would be complex. It cannot be turned off, cannot be transferred, and cannot be replicated. The state cannot meaningfully control it without controlling the person, which would raise constitutional and human rights concerns in most modern societies. The economy would respond pragmatically. If the individual monetizes their ability, they become a niche service provider. Their presence at social events could increase matchmaking efficiency. Reality television producers might attempt to build formats around verified attraction detection, although the inability to transmit the signal through screens limits scalability. Investors would quickly realize that the ability does not scale beyond one human body. It remains a bottleneck resource. Scarcity increases value, but lack of replication limits systemic disruption. In long-term relational systems like marriage, the implications become more delicate. The individual would inevitably detect attraction within committed relationships, one partner feeling drawn to someone else. This does not mean betrayal, attraction is not action. But the mere knowledge could destabilize trust if disclosed irresponsibly. The individual would face a moral choice repeatedly. When, if ever, is it justified to reveal that someone feels attraction they have not acted upon? Most legal systems do not punish feelings. Social systems, however, often react emotionally to their exposure. Psychologically, the individual may experience gradual detachment. Knowing that attraction is widespread reduces the illusion of permanence. Romantic exclusivity becomes understood as behavioral commitment rather than emotional exclusivity. This could foster a more mature understanding of relationships, grounded in choice rather than impulse. Alternatively, it could produce fatigue. Constant exposure to unfiltered attraction might reduce its perceived significance, similar to how hearing a fire alarm daily would eventually dull its urgency. Infrastructure and governance would remain largely unchanged. There would be no need for new ministries or regulatory frameworks beyond privacy debates. Insurance markets would not collapse. Transportation systems would not require redesign. The ability affects interpersonal microdynamics rather than macrostructures. Its power is concentrated in social negotiation, not material production. However, cultural narratives would shift subtly. If society accepts that one verified individual can detect attraction reliably, it reinforces the idea that attraction is objective and measurable rather than mysterious. Philosophically, this alters how people conceptualize romance. The language of intuition and chemistry might be replaced with a more clinical understanding. Attraction becomes a detectable state, not a poetic abstraction. Over decades, the novelty would fade. The individual would age. Their ability would remain singular unless biologically inherited or spontaneously replicated, which we exclude for plausibility. Without replication, systemic transformation remains limited. The world adapts by incorporating the person into existing structures rather than restructuring itself around them. Perhaps the most interesting long-term effect is informational asymmetry. One human permanently knows more about the emotional undercurrents of any room than anyone else. Yet this knowledge does not grant control over outcomes. Attraction does not override free will, ethics, or circumstance. It is a signal, not a command. The individual may know who feels drawn to whom, but they cannot force reciprocity, longevity, or integrity. In the end, the ability exposes a simple truth that society already suspects but prefers to romanticize. Attraction is common, unstable, and only meaningful when someone decides to act on it, and so the world would continue almost unchanged, except for one person who quietly understands just how often it flickers.